And my goodness, Angel Reese fans are furious. Now, he's got a clip out there on with Jeff Teague on a podcast. I can't even play this clip.
WNBA drama was recently sparked by a comedian's quip. Brittney Griner and Angel Reese went into defensive mode in response to Charleston White's remarks on Caitlin Clark, but what transpired next has everyone talking. The fallout indicates a more serious problem with women's basketball.
Sports supporters, well, we're going to talk about this Charleston White Club 520 podcast situation involving NBA player Jeff Teague, and of course they're all sitting around BSing. Charleston White is a comedian, and he's very damn funny, but he is also not afraid, like any good comedian, to roast or destroy.
After comedian Charleston White's recent podcast appearance went viral, the WNBA community is in a frenzy. This isn't your average sports dispute. During the Club 520 podcast, White didn't simply give Caitlin Clark kudos. He ignited a whirlwind that is exposing more profound inequalities in women's basketball.
Comedians do. They're not worried about anybody's feelings. They literally go out there and crush. And that's what Charleston White did in this clip that went mega viral. I saw somebody asking, why would you have this guy on this podcast? Because it got 3 million views.
Since context is important in this case, let's examine what actually transpired on that show. The podcast, which has now received over 3 million views, swiftly expanded beyond Clark White's remarks about Brittney Griner, which particularly touched people's nerves. White, who is known for his unfiltered comedy style, began talking about Clark's influence on women's basketball, pointing out how she's attracting millions of new viewers to the sport. However, things took a turn when he began comparing her to other WNBA stars. He brought up her time in Russia, making jokes that many felt went too far.
Like, you know who Juju Watkins Man, we need an OnlyFans WNBA game. Yeah, then I tune in, but I ain't finna watch them long-legged women run up and down the court with them knees. Yeah, man, with them knees. Them high knees. Them ain't no knees.
Shorty from the B.
The 21, she played the W with the long knees.
Some long ass arms, she be a good defender.
Yeah, man, you know what kind of money, and I heard they don't make a lot of money over there either.
It's coming, man.
Yeah,
it's on the way. It's gonna get better.
And that's, I think that's
a chance, Chuck. Give him a chance.
I think that's the dope thing about Caitlin too, because regardless of the scrutiny they put on her name, every time she's came out and spoken publicly, she said, "Hey, I'm good, but we need to push the league." And like you said, she did a lot of vocal stuff that helped a lot of black women in the process, man.
She did? Oh, yeah.
She pushed the narrative to help a lot of people get paid, despite a lot of.
Brittney Griner did that. I thought Brittney Griner did that.
He's a motherfucker.
The real BG.
The real BG.
Coming out the Russian prison.
Yeah. Did you see that motherfucker with her shirt off at that pool party?
Supporters contend that comedians push limits and treat everyone equally, which is exactly what they do.
That's why. Now, it went viral because of Angel Reese, and, you know, she's reposted some old April post about protect women's sports. A lot of people are speculating, does that have to do with this interview? Who knows? Maybe she's actually taking a stand against dudes in women's sports. I'd commend her if she's doing that. Hats off to you, Angel Reese. But some people think she's playing the victim because of a comedian roasting her.
When Sydney Colson, the point guard for the Las Vegas AC, made the decision to speak out, the matter truly got out of hand. She not only attacked White, but also the entire show for promoting what she called sexist and uneducated viewpoints.
And this was her response to said podcast. And look, Charleston White absolutely crushed Brittney Griner.
The tweet quickly became popular among WNBA players and supporters.
Vegas Aces point guard is all been out of shape. And unfortunately for her, this didn't go well because some people called her out while she's trying to play all high and mighty over this podcast for some previous Twitter post that she put out about Iowa hockey.
This is when things start to get interesting. Social media users began investigating and discovered something that Colson likely wished they hadn't. A January 2023 tweet in which she made similar jokes to what she was now criticizing and compared a female basketball player to a male actor. The hypocrisy of this discovery wasn't overlooked, and screenshots of her previous tweet began to circulate alongside her recent complaints. People brought attention to the double standard, asking how it's possible to criticize someone else's jokes when you've made similar ones yourself. This revelation moved the conversation away from White's remarks and instead focused on consistency and authenticity in these exchanges. Angel Reese's response adds yet another intriguing dimension to this drama. Instead of openly responding to White's remarks, she reposted an earlier letter advocating for women's sports protection. Nobody missed the timing. Her fans sprung into action right once, with some even suggesting that the comic faced legal action, which only served to fan the flames. One of the podcast hosts, Jeff Tay, attempted to defuse the tension. He released a statement outlining their connection with Reese, said that she was cool and that we all thought of her as a little sister, but his attempt to quell the controversy that followed and the viral dissemination of White's remarks failed. The WNBA players' responses have been very telling. Some have remained silent in public while applauding articles that are critical of white people, while others have spoken out more forcefully. The disparity in reactions demonstrates the intricate dynamics at work when humor and sports collide. This entire situation is reminiscent of recent women's basketball scandals. Only months ago, Shaquille O'Neal received similar criticism for remarks regarding players' attire. The trends are becoming more obvious as the sport becomes more popular and draws more mainstream commentary, including comedy. Supporters of White contend that his remarks demonstrate that women's basketball is getting more accepted after all comedians make fun of what's pertinent, pointing out that NBA players frequently receive similar treatment from comedians without it igniting a significant scandal. With Clark joining the WNBA and bringing in previously unheard-of media attention, the timing of everything couldn't be more crucial. The league is now under greater scrutiny than ever before, and players and officials are still figuring out how to deal with this heightened focus. It is impossible to overstate how much social media has contributed to this dispute. What began as podcast comments evolved into a much more extensive discussion about sports culture and respect comedy. Every reaction, tweet, and leaked post gives the narrative a new angle. It's especially intriguing to see how attitudes vary by generation. Older basketball fans frequently defend White's right to comedy, while younger supporters appear more inclined to support Reese and Carlson, even if they disagree with several of his humor. Traditional sports media has handled this subject with caution, balancing reporting on the controversy with avoiding promoting possibly objectionable information. This hesitancy has become part of the broader discussion over how women's sports are covered. White hasn't changed his mind about his remarks. If anything, the issue has given him more material. He has continued to make similar jokes and make appearances since, stating that comedy has no bounds and that athletes are free to make fun of the podcast. Hosts are in an awkward situation because, although their shows have received a lot of attention, they are also being criticized for their part in promoting divisive remarks. Their efforts to strike a balance between responsibility and fun bring attention to the difficulties the media faces in the current environment. The incident spurred crucial conversations about the relationship between comedy and sports, including whether comedians should be prohibited from interacting with sportsmen and whether greater visibility always translates into more criticism. There are no simple answers to these problems. The discussions also turned up some fascinating within the WNBA player community. Younger players are more outspoken about the scandal, while veterans like Diana Taurasi have been noticeably quiet. This generational divide is indicative of larger shifts in how athletes respond to criticism from the public. This story is further complicated by the financial ramifications. Clark's entry into the WNBA is anticipated to generate previously unheard-of revenue. Some contend that greater financial success entails embracing more comedy and other forms of public discourse. Others continue to hold that professional comedians have begun to weigh in too much, arguing that respect shouldn't be sacrificed for financial gain. A number of well-known comedians have supported White's right to joke about anything while acknowledging the delicate nature of women's sports, citing comedy's long history of pushing boundaries and challenging social norms. As this develops, marketing professionals observe how it could impact sponsorship agreements. Clark has already secured large sponsorship deals, and Reese and Griffin have established a strong brand of their own. Collaborations, how businesses handle this dispute, may establish standards for athlete endorsements in the future. The number of listeners to the podcast has increased. What began as a routine episode, Skyrocket has evolved into a cultural touchstone in conversations about sports humor and the way social media exacerbates disputes. Future sports podcast approaches to contentious subjects will probably be influenced by the host's handling of the fallout. As more characters and players contribute their viewpoints, the plot keeps changing as the WNBA gets ready for what could be its most-watched season ever. This controversy serves as a preview of the difficulties that lie ahead. It brings to light a larger problem in women's basketball that no one is discussing, as new stars like Clark bring unprecedented attention to the sport. We're seeing a clear divide in how players handle this spotlight. Some fully embrace it, while others push back against certain types of attention, and this controversy perfectly illustrates that split. Each new comment adds layers to an already complex discussion about respect, comedy, and the future of women's basketball. Although most people believe that White's remarks regarding Griner were offensive to many WNBA players and fans, a closer look reveals that the true problem lies not with one comedian's jokes, but rather with how women's basketball responds to widespread attention. The Shaquille O'Neal incident from a few months ago offers fascinating background. When Shaq made remarks regarding players' wardrobe, he received comparable criticism, but there is an important distinction. White's, an outsider whose job it is to actually push limits and stir up controversy, spoke about the sport, while an insider, a basketball star, shocked the audience. The timing is what makes this issue particularly complicated. Clark's entry into the WNBA is drawing new kinds of attention in addition to new fans. The social media response exposes intriguing patterns, and the league has never experienced this degree of mainstream coverage before. Every comment, joke, and criticism is amplified in ways that weren't even feasible a few years ago.